Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Crypto Gorilla video. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Paul, the founder of Somnia, to find out about what they're building. Is there going to be an airdrop? When is their token launching? And a ton more. As usual, I am not a financial advisor. Nothing in this video is financial advice. Hit that subscribe button and let's get right into the interview. So Paul, welcome to the show. Maybe start off by introducing yourself.
Hey folks, I'm Paul. I'm the founder of Somnia. Nice to see you today.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here. Before we go deeper into Somnia, could you give the audience a clear idea of what Somnia is? Maybe like the 60-second elevator pitch on what you guys are building and what you aim to be.
Yeah, cool. So Somnia is a high-performance EVM compatible L1. So we're trying to be the fastest blockchain in the EVM space. In terms of performance characteristics, we do over 1 million transactions per second. For those that are a bit more technical, that's 50 gigagas a second. That's a lot. We then have sub-second latency. So when you do a transaction in Somnia, it will resolve really quickly, giving people buttery smooth end experiences. We have 100 millisecond block times to enable that. And then we have incredibly cheap gas fees. So we're talking like less than 0.1 cent gas fees to enable developers to put more computation on the blockchain. So the real vision is kind of what Ethereum had, this world computer, and we're really focused on the entertainment industry, going very deep in gaming, in metaverse, in social, and what we're trying to be is basically this world computer where people are putting a lot more logic and data on chain.
The transaction speed is one I've heard a lot of chains use. 1 million is a lot. First, I don't think I've heard another one say 1 million. Has Somnia been able to test that? Like, you guys are still on testnet. How do you know it can actually hit that? Have you had the users, I don't know, for like an hour consistently just pump out 1 million transactions per second? Or how do you measure that it can actually deliver on that?
Yeah, totally. So not yet is what I'd say. We've got some apps coming up in the next few weeks that are really going to push. That will be purely driven by end users. So the way we've done that in the past is essentially created massive bot farms. So computers all around the world, in like Asia, America, all over the world, basically doing transactions. So they'll be doing ERC20 swaps, they'll be doing Uniswaps, they'll be doing NFT mints. So it kind of simulates a real user load, but it's not actually a person doing it at the end of the day. But we've got some apps coming up in the next few weeks that are going to jam loads of transactions. I don't know if we'll get to 1 million, but we'll definitely be getting to near the hundreds of thousands, if not above that. So in terms of the testing, what we've done basically is created these massive array of bots and jam the chain with that. So we know it can do that, but obviously we haven't had real people doing that yet.
Got you. And then, so when you if you had to compare it to any chain out there, I mean, you're an L1, so we could put it on the scale of Ethereum, Solana, AVAX, there's a ton. Who would you compare yourself the most to, just so my audience could get an exact idea of where you stand?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't actually know how to answer this question. I'll think about it. So I think if I was to just pull it out there, I'd say we're like Sui or Aptos, but because they're not EVM based, it's not quite the same. So Sui and Aptos are also very high performance chains. Sui especially is focused very on gaming and had this kind of entertainment angle. So I'd say we're quite similar to them, but we've been built on top of the EVM very, very purposely, because I've built technology in the past where I've tried to get developers to adopt new programming languages, and they're doing this at the moment with Move, and it's just so hard, and you have to spend tens of millions of dollars, and I failed previously. So we made a very conscious decision early on to build it on top of the EVM, so we can pull in all of the developers from the EVM ecosystem and all of the tooling, all the workflows. So I don't think in the EVM space there's anything live that's anywhere near Somnia at the moment. There are a couple of chains that are coming out, like Mega Ether, Monad, who are pretty good in terms of performance, not quite as fast as us, but getting there. So they'll be comparable, but they're not live yet. So in terms of live chains, probably go for Sui and Aptos, but it's still quite different because of the program environment.
Do you think I understand from a dev point of view, the advantage of EVM for user point of view, like whenever there's a mainstream thing that happens in crypto, it's on Solana because everybody recently has been going for meme coins. We'll see specific apps for that chain trending in the app store, versus when I think EVM, even though lately it hasn't been the best wallet, I think MetaMask, which I don't know, I couldn't imagine teaching my dad to use MetaMask. Like, it's not easy. Do you think there's an advantage to Solana having their own apps that are trending in the app store? And is that like an area you plan to tackle, or you're just going to continue using those wallets? Like, how do you plan to get in those users when there's still that barrier with EVM wallets?
Oh yeah, so this is a big vision piece for us, and we're doing things quite differently. So obviously The EVM wallets, by the way, is getting much more mature. There are really good wallets out there, like Zerion, Backpack, and then Phantom's also come to the EVM now. So you've actually got some newer wallets that are, I would say, easier for an end consumer to use. But for us, the vision, if you really want to go Web2 audience, I think you almost have to get rid of the blockchain, and you need users to interact with apps, and they don't even know they're on a blockchain at the end of the day. They're just going to a game, having fun, they're buying items, they're selling items. They don't even know they're on chain. They're just having a good time, and they have a wallet in the background, but they don't even necessarily need to know that. I think the same for social. I think the same for, I think across all applications, we need to get to a space where consumers are just going to these apps and having fun. Blockchains, at the end of the day, they're infrastructure. It's kind of like when you go to a website, you don't know if it's running on AWS, on GCP, you just go to a website, right? And blockchains need to become the same in my view. So I think at the moment, the model you see with people selecting wallets, selecting chains, having to do all this bridging stuff, I think that is going to move away. And we are really, when we're working with teams, we're really trying to get to teams who are looking at building up a Web2 consumer base. And I think to do that, you have to make the blockchain completely transparent, and consumers don't even know they have a wallet. They just have fun apps, can trade and cash out in some way.
Completely agree. Even for Web2 apps, we've seen it where it always used to be put your email password. Now you can just click log in with X or log in with Gmail. Yep. People just want it quick and they don't want to know anything about the tech. Building onto that comparing question, I think a lot of the chains, when I think of AVAX or Ronin, I think gaming. When I think Solana, I think meme coins. ETH, you could say DeFi, NFTs. Are you guys focused on any one niche, or are you kind of just painting with a broad stroke? Is that the that's the expression, painting with a broad brush? I don't know. Yeah, there you go, broad brush. Yeah.
Yeah. So Somnia is a general purpose blockchain, so you could build any application on top of it. But I personally believe, and we personally believe, that you need to focus as an ecosystem to really build up the proposition. I think the speed of Somnia is incredible and will unlock new on-chain applications that have never been seen before. But I think you really need to niche down and kind of grow out from a niche and then maybe go general purpose later. I think the age of what we saw life cycle of everyone being a general purpose blockchain won't work anymore. You need to specialize. So we're specializing as a broad category, I'd say entertainment. And then I'd really focus that down on gaming and the metaverse. We don't like to use the word metaverse because everyone's like, the metaverse is dead in Web3. What we mean by that is kind of like sporting events, music events, and they're linked to on-chain assets, essentially. That's what kind of we're talking about there. So for gaming, that's kind of one very strong laser focus for us. The reason for this is, one, I've worked in the games industry for 12 years. I've sold technology to the AAA game industry, the independent industry. I know it quite well. And I come from a company called Improbable, who we're very strongly partnered with, and they've been doing this in the games industry for the past 12 years as well. So we have very strong connections there, very strong network, and we kind of get it, and we know how the space works. The other thing I think from a technology perspective, there's just a really strong fit. The problem game developers have is if they're building a fully on-chain application, or even if they're building NFTs, they tend to do this thing called gas sponsorship. So they're kind of paying for the gas for their end users. And that costs them an absolute fortune. I didn't realize this. I won't name the chain, but there was a game had around 100 daily active users. So it's not a big game by any sense of imagination. And they were spending, I think it was like nearly $10,000 a month on gas sponsorship, which was crazy. I was sitting there like, you spend $10,000 a month in this game and you only have 100 daily active users. And so really with Somnia, because of its performance characteristics, we're going to crash that price down and make it actually economically viable to build a game on chain. The second part, which I think is also important, is people will be able to start putting more of their logic and data on the blockchain, which I think will unlock new use cases. There are a bunch of these that I could talk about. I think the one that's most salient that's happening today is people are starting to put the metadata of their game on chain because we have all this performance. So every time you do a headshot or every time you win a match or anything basically that happens in the game, they'll put that on chain as a piece of data. And what's cool about this is because you have all this data kind of spewing around, other apps can be built on top of that data and can help the player experience in some form or fashion. So an example, you could make a companion app where you can see your character kind of equip stuff. You could make a marketplace where people can trade stuff. But I think the killer app that I'm most interested in that I've seen being built in the ecosystem is a prediction market around gaming. So it allows you to say, I reckon in the next match, I'm going to get 10 headshots. You put down a bet. And then if you get 10 headshots, you get paid out. And I think this killer combination of like gambling and gaming, I think is going to be really interesting. And it's possible because of Somnia's performance characteristics. there's a load of other stuff I can talk about gaming. We'll probably go through that later, but that's from a technology perspective. We're going to be very strongly focused there. The metaverse is also another one. Can't use the word metaverse because metaverse is dead. But this again comes back to my lineage at Improbable. We built metaverse technology for the past 7 years, so before it was even called the metaverse. And we had this really cool tech that allows you to get tens of thousands of people into the same space at the same time digitally. So everyone can see each other, everyone can talk to each other, everyone can be together in these massive crowd experiences digitally, which has just never really been possible for. That required 10 years of R&D, new technology, was really hard to build. And we've taken that to market and work with people like Major League Baseball, Universal Music. The baseball one's really cool. We actually create like a digital twin of the live baseball match by streaming data from the baseball stadium into the cloud, turning that into 3D models in real time and creating like a one-to-one replica of the live baseball match. And then you as a consumer can be in that baseball match and feel like you're there in the crowd, but you're just at home on your couch or you're going on your work on your phone. You just need internet connection to play. You don't need a gaming PC. So I think that's going to be a very interesting application space for us as well. We're also pushing a lot into the UGC side of things. So we've got a bunch of AI creator tools that allow people to easily generate 3D assets and experiences. And that will kind of build into this kind of decentralized metaversal experience, which anyone can create for. So that's another place that I think we're going to be pushing in quite hard as well.
The testing 10,000 users, that reminds me of like the other side when they kept doing all those tests.
It's the same technology. So they actually they're the technology provider behind Otherside.
Oh, awesome. Got you. In terms of all these games and all these betting apps, how do you plan to get them to build on some, like I understand the tech side, but there's also like a marketing side. And from my understanding, every time I talk to a project, I'm like, why did you choose to build on this chain? They're always like, oh, they paid us. They gave us a grant. Like, is that the only thing these projects are thinking of? Or what's the relationship like with these upcoming projects? How are you getting them to come build on Somnia as opposed to choosing a chain that's already established, already has a mainnet, volume, users, and so on?
Yeah, it makes sense. So we have a grants program like most other people. But I think for me, money is like one piece of the puzzle. I think really it's about supporting the projects and giving them the highest probability of success. That's how you are successful as a chain. So we do a lot of things here. So first of all, we help support people in their go-to-market. So particularly, we're good at this in the gaming sector. So company I previously worked at, Improbable, they publish 3 games themselves. So they have a small publishing team and really understand the mechanisms and mechanics of taking a game to market and how you get in front of a large audience and how you build up a player base. So we can help people with the go-to-market side of the equation. We also have quite a large community ourselves, which we can help inject into the games. We've already been doing this with early games in the ecosystem, and literally they get like tens of thousands of players straight away. So it's really, really useful to have that strong community that we can kind of inject into the games very quickly. The other side is, this is kind of outside of money. There is a kind of investment vehicle that we have where we're putting down larger check sizes than you would see normally in a grants program and co-owning part of the application or game. And that works as like an investment vehicle where they take tokens or equity. And that's a much bigger program that we're doing there and put down much bigger check sizes than you'd normally see in a grants program. The other part obviously is technology. So there's a technology benefit to using Somnia because of its cost profile, because of its performance profile. You can deploy on Somnia and not have to worry about another app taking up loads of the transactions and your app no longer working, because there's so many transactions that can be done on top of Somnia. You don't have that noisy neighbor problem. And then the final thing I'd say is we have quite a strong investor network that we help introduce projects in the ecosystem to. So we are invested by people like A16Z, SoftBank, Marana. And so we can help with kind of introductions to that investor network, which helps people raise their own funding as well. I think the final thing, we'll probably get into this a bit better, is we're starting to build up a kind of Web2 gaming consumer base, which we can inject into the experiences. And I think that's another key point. For me, developers really want 2 things. They want distribution, which is an audience, and cash to build their projects. And we can help them with both, essentially.
Are you trying to get like flagship titles or existing games, especially that you have that history and that network in the gaming realm? Like AVAX, yeah, they have new titles, but they're also going after games like MapleStory. I know EVE Online it's going to be a Web3 game. Are there any existing titles that you're onboarding?
So this is a really interesting question and quite varied. So strategically, what we are doing is trying to bring in Web3 native teams who have built Web3 native games before. They understand what it means to build on chain, what it means to build up a Web3 native audience. So we're bringing in those guys. The big set, though, that we're focusing a lot more on, I'd say, is a Web2 developer audience. So people who build Web2 games and bringing them into Web3. So there, we're first looking at, I would say, the independent scene. And we're looking at two different types of teams. One type are so at the moment, the games industry is going through what I call a deconsolidation phase. So a lot of people are leaving the AAA gaming industry and creating their own independent teams. It tends to go in like these cycles of deconsolidation and reconciliation. So at the moment, these guys are kind of breaking away from AAA and creating their own independent studios. And we obviously have the network and are talking to them to kind of get them inspired to think about, hey, do you want to build something on Web3? Do you want to work with us there? We then also have kind of services and support to help them because they tend to not understand how to build a game on chain. So we work with a partner called Uprising, and we work with Improbable, who have a Web3 services org, kind of help people bridge their game from Web2 to Web3. So that's one thing, which is new independent studios, which we're kind of bringing Web2 developers into Web3, which I think is incredibly important to grow the pie and make Web3 successful. The other part is looking at kind of wish lists and really highly wanted games and kind of going after them and saying, hey, would you be interested in converting this to Web3? Obviously, there's benefits there. And there's an interesting, they already have an audience and already have a community around them. So converting those over, I think, is another good piece of our strategy that we're kind of putting in. The third part, and we haven't kind of closed these deals yet, so there's no flagship title yet, is I think the biggest flagship we have in the moment is a game called Maelstrom, which is this ship battling game that kind of, you'll basically have these pirate ships and it's kind of like a battle royale game where it's like last ship standing wins. It's kind of like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but like juiced up to 11 is the way I kind of think about it. So that's probably like the biggest title we have at the moment. But then we're also looking at kind of mega IPs is what I call them. The risk here, this one we have to be very careful with because they're very expensive, TLDR. They just cost a lot of money and they're very hard to convert over from a purely go-to-market proposition. And so you really need to pick your partners carefully there. I've done this before in my previous experience where we've worked with the big AAA guys, done the big AAA IPs, and often what will happen is you'll close the deal, everyone will be happy, and then 18 months in, they'll shut the game down because it's not working out for some reason. And so we are looking at those kind of mega titles of AAA, but we're being very cautious because I've done this before and it's very hard and probability is high to fail. So that's why we're much more focused on the independent scene because I think there's a much better chance of getting those games to market. I also think the independent scene is where most of the innovation happens in the games industry. These guys are the smaller studios. They can afford to take the risk. They can afford to maybe try some new on-chain mechanics, maybe try some new business models that the AAA games industry just don't have that risk appetite. They want to copy what is already working, or they want to build Call of Duty 17. They don't want to take massive risk. And so for me, it's really focusing on the independent scene, and the Web3 native scene is where we're going to be. In terms of massive flagships, we're talking to people and thinking about it, but we're being very cautious there.
In the independent scene, what's the reaction like to Web3? Are they more open now? They used to hate Web3, right? Or are they interested there? Or
yeah, it's a good question. I would say they're still very skeptical. Let's put it nicely. It's not. I think the real question to have is why? Like, why do I want to put this game on Web3? Why does that benefit me in any way? What's apart from fundraising, like what's it useful for? And I get this all the time. Like a load of my mates have small independent studios. We go to the pub and they take the mickey at me. They're like, why are you doing this crypto stuff? It's just all scams. And I'm like, it's not scams. Listen. So the way I kind of convince people, there's a few different things. The first thing I say is the games industry has like step changes. When masses of new players come in, they tend to come from new platforms. So when consoles came about, when mobile came about, there was loads of players that came in. New genres, so MOBAs, first-person shooters, well back in the day, survival shooters, extraction shooters, all these kind of genres they call step changes, and loads of players come into these new games. And then business models. And this is where I kind of really get people thinking on the business model side of things. So when free-to-play came out, loads of players started playing games and never played them before. And I think in Web3, there is a really interesting business model that will unlock a whole new load of players. I think Axie was kind of scratching at it with play and earn, but they didn't quite execute it correctly. And I think there is something there, though, that's really interesting, where players can play a game and also earn money and have a way to cash out, that I think could be a killer use case. So that's one thing that I say to them, and I kind of explain this to them, and they're like, this is kind of interesting. I want to kind of tackle this problem and kind of work it out. The other thing I'd say is I think Web3 gives them a really useful lever to drive an early community much easier than it is in Web2, because you have these kind of crypto assets that you can kind of get a really diehard community around your game. That's often the hardest part. If you have a multiplayer game, especially, you need to have like 5,000-10,000 players so you can regularly matchmake people together and actually make sense as a game. And when you have those crypto assets associated with them, people are buying them. They tend to be pretty devout fans of your game. So it's really good to build a really strong early community, which then you can build off of after that. And when they kind of see that and they get that, and they're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's a good way to get people to buy in and have skin in the game. The final part I say to them is, this is really visionary. This is where they kind of they're kind of like, you're mad. I think if you start putting more logic and data from games that normally live in game engines on chain, you get this idea of what I call composable games. So what does this mean? So I put the kind of a loot box mechanic and a set of data on chain now, and now other games can use that and easily add loot boxes. Or I put movement logic and shooting logic on chain, and now other people can use that movement logic and shooting logic. So essentially they can take components and take data from one game and move it into another, and you can build games faster because of that. And then there's another game that gets built and another game. You get this kind of like explosion of different games that can be built super fast because of all these component parts. So similar to what happened in DeFi, where you had like composable blocks, I believe the same thing can happen in gaming. We just need to enable developers to put more stuff on chain. Because of that, you'll get more games built. And because of that, you'll find more fun games, the new genres, and you'll get more players playing the games at the end of the day. That part, though, this is when they're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. The thing there's a big gap in tooling. We need to make it much easier for game developers to put their logic and data on chain and allow them to stay within the game engine rather than having to randomly move out of the game engine and do something on the side. So we're building a lot of this stuff at the moment. So the first thing is a very simple thing, which allows the metadata of the game to be put on chain, and they can do that all within the game engine. That's the stuff that I was talking about before. That's relatively straightforward to do, and that already provides them value because other people can make those composable apps on top of that metadata. The next thing is then allowing them to easily take code and move that on chain. That's a little bit more difficult and requires a bit more tooling, but it's something we're investing in because we believe in this vision of composable games in this future where everything is living on chain and can become composable. So that's what we're doing there. And then that's the bit where they kind of look at people more skeptical. The first two parts they kind of buy into a lot more easier.
Yeah, it'll definitely be easier to onboard if you have these dev toolkits for gaming, for AI, especially when you combine the two. And hopefully games will be a lot more willing to come onto Web3 because there's not that coding barrier that they have to go learn. Yeah. Outside of the gaming, or we could include gaming in this question, but what do you think the top dApps building on Somnia are? So whether it's games or prediction markets, whatever it is, if there's something somebody could go check out on testnet, and maybe you also mentioned there's some interesting ones coming out in the next few weeks. Are there any project names you could drop for us? Yeah,
so I think the biggest name is that kind of tech that I was talking about before with the tens of thousands of players. So that's a technology called M². They obviously have these large activations. They had one last week with a project called Jitter. So if you follow M², you can check those out. Those are not fully on chain yet, but they're getting more on chain. Each time they do one of these activations, more of the data, more of the assets are getting put on chain. So those are ones I definitely stay tuned to. They're very, very interesting experiences. Like Jitter was kind of like, I can't really explain it. That's how hard. It's kind of like Fall Guys, but with thousands of people. So it's an absolutely mad Fall Guys is the way I kind of think about it and put it. The MLB one's obviously a very different experience. It's more metaversy where you actually get to watch a baseball game. The stuff we do with Universal Music, they tend to be with K-pop artists where you can go watch a famous K-pop artist, like we did one with Twice, where you could kind of see them doing a live performance. So there's loads of different kinds of experiences on top of M², and they're going to all be on top of Somnia and be on chain essentially. The Yuga Labs ones, just for full transparency, they're not. They're going to be on ape chain, so different project there. The other one that I'm really interested in, so this is a partner, so Uprising, and then the game that I kind of talked about before, Maelstrom, is one of their games. So Uprising are a Web3 publisher, which we're working with very closely, who are helping us take Web2 studios and convert them into Web3 capable studios. So they're a very key piece of the puzzle. And probably the biggest game they have at the moment that I've kind of talked about already is Maelstrom. which is this cool kind of like battle royale ship game. So I'll pick another game that they have. So the other game that we've announced with them is a game called Dark Table. So this is a CCG, kind of similar to like Parallels or Hearthstone. But I think they won't like me saying that, but it's a CCG just to give people context what it's like. The really cool thing about it though is it's got 4-player mechanics. So instead of playing one-on-one, you play against 3 other people. And so that creates a lot more strategy and intrigue. I also think the deck building is really easy. Like it's not a hard game to get into. I think even if you've never played a CCG before, you can get into it, but it has a lot of depth and a lot of complexity. And so I think that's going to be a really cool game and probably one of our flagship titles as well.
Awesome. I know you guys have a questing campaign. I assume you're directing a lot of the users to these different games and different apps in the campaign. The campaign itself, I don't know if you can answer legally. Is there going to be any airdrop or any financial incentive at the end of this campaign?
Oh, he's trying to get the alpha from me. I cannot say if there will be an airdrop. My team will kill me. What I can say is other teams in this place have done points. You guys may have seen what happens after that, but I cannot confirm there will be an airdrop because of the points.
Okay. So points leading to something. And then, so you have your campaign, which people should definitely check out, especially if they want to learn about the ecosystem. On top of that, though, you guys are also on Kaito. Is there going to be any incentive at the end of that Kaito campaign once you guys finally launch?
Yeah, Kaito is an interesting one. We are experimenting with the incentives around Kaito at the moment. So at the moment, we've been very public about this and transparent. I think this is generally what we do as a project. We kind of lay out there. Some projects have like, they don't tell you how they're doing any kind of incentive schemes. They just kind of have them behind the scenes and people kind of make stuff up and have to do loads of things, but they're never really that transparent. So we're quite clear. So with Kaito, we've already launched one incentive program, which is around the 7-day time period. So basically every 7 days, we allocate 5,000 USDC to the top. I think it's 20 yappers on the 7-day thing. And then we allocate 100,000 Somnia points to the top 100 yappers. And we do that every week. So you would have seen that campaign. We're very transparent about that. I can't say what the points will turn into, but we've already talked about before. We are though experimenting with this. I think at the moment, what we've seen from the community is the Kaito leaderboard and the algorithm changes quite a lot. And so people have been reshuffled and got a bit annoyed about this. So we are still experimenting, kind of dipping our toe in here rather than some other projects which have gone all in up front, because we're waiting for the algorithm to stabilize and make sure that we're incentivizing the right kind of content and the right kind of creators. And at the moment, it's very, very volatile, and that's causing people to get a bit annoyed with it. So we're still experimenting, but we'll probably be doing more here because I think Kaito is a great tool to kind of reward a large set of creators and get them interested in your project and creating good content around your project in a kind of mass way, rather than other tactics.
Agreed. And it helps filter out the bots for a lot of projects, which before that was a major issue. I want to jump into the NFT side. I mean, my background is very much NFTs. I know last week there was the Quills adventure NFT that dropped, performed really well. I think it was like, not that anybody here is flipping, but I think it was like an 8x.
Guys, you got to hold that.
Yeah. So that's the question. Is there an incentive, airdrop, multiplier, access to something, special access to a group or whatever it is for holding the Quills adventure, or maybe another NFT coming out in the future?
Oh, goodness me. Right. So what can I say about Quills? Let's make this so I say something rather than just go TBD. So what I can say is we are going to be doing Discord roles around NFT projects in the ecosystem and giving people kind of like privileges and early access and sneak peeks and alpha on stuff. So we'll definitely be doing that. I can confirm that. We are talking to the Quills about other programs that we can do together. And ultimately, the way I kind of see NFTs is they're like the culture layer of a blockchain. They are like the real true fans who create really strong content. And I think for us, when we think about kind of rewards and programs like that, we want to kind of give these to the people who are most aligned with the project, not people who are just farming it for the sake of farming it. They're actually interested, invested, and aligned with the project. And so we're talking to them about this. I cannot say if it's going to be an airdrop. I cannot say if it's going to be a points multiplier, but we are talking to them very actively, and we're very aligned with helping the projects that are aligned well with Somnia, and they're building communities that are aligned well with Somnia as well. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that gives people enough hint.
I also like that they dropped on ETH like before you guys launched. I think that's a good onboarding tool for chains to use. I find when they drop the main NFT on their chain, like people aren't on there yet. So it's a lot harder for them to get volume and all, versus you're able to build this community before people find out about other projects, they get more involved. It's exactly what we saw with Hypeos on Hyper EVM. They were like 0.02 and they ran up to 2 ETH. So I really hope the Quills see that kind of success. Are there any other NFTs that you're aware of, or maybe other dApps that people should check out for different opportunities? If you can give us any alpha here, not financial advice, of course.
Yeah, so I would say look at the uprising NFTs. I think we may have already, I don't know. There is something happening with those NFTs, so I take a look at those. The grillz gang NFTs, they already are associated with the project. They've been with the project for quite a long time. They get points boosts. So if you have a grillz gang NFT, you can get points boosts with those. And we'll be doing more stuff with the grillz gang because we're big fans of them. They've been very big supporters of from pretty much day zero, because they're very into like the metaverse side of things, and they wanted to be in like our metaverse experiences and stuff like that. So we're very aligned with them. Just thinking about the question again. What I would say is we are always looking at projects in the ecosystem, how they're using NFTs to build communities and how that can help build the Somnia ecosystem. I can't tell you this NFT project is going to be like this one. We do also want to make sure that we're not massively diluting this and just like everyone gets everything. And so we are being kind of selective here. But what I can say is those 3 projects, we've kind of been very vocal about them and like obvious about them. And so those are the ones that I take a look at if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And then what I would also say is we'll be open about this stuff. So be careful with the scams. What I have actually seen since the cool stuff is loads of scam projects have been coming up. I don't want to name names, but be careful with projects that you haven't seen anyone in the team talking about or us talk about in any formal fashion, because they may be a scam. So be careful there.
There's always people who try to take advantage of the hype, so you always need to be careful. I guess final question here: what's the timeline for the mainnet launch and token launch?
Oh god, you're asking all the questions that like they're really, really hard questions. So I cannot give an exact timeline. In terms of the mainnet launch for us, there are kind of 2 things we kind of need to be true. Well, there's kind of a third thing as well. The first thing is the technology needs to be fully ready. So we only launched testnet like 6 weeks ago or so. We need more time for that to bake in. I will say that is going very well. Like we haven't had any major outages. The technology has been running at the scale we need it to. We've been decentralizing the validators. So we're currently at 10 validators. We'll get to 30 in a couple of weeks. We'll get to 100 before mainnet. So that's growing at a good rate. So I'd say from a technology perspective, that's going well. The other side is the ecosystem projects all being ready, because we don't want to launch a mainnet and just don't have any ecosystem projects for anyone to do. So they should be coming online during the April timeframe and during the May timeframe. And so hopefully we'll have a decent set of ecosystem projects that we can launch the mainnet with. The token launch will be associated with the mainnet, but we're still kind of working out the exact mechanics there. So I can't tell you when. I can tell you it will be this year, and I can tell you that a few things have to come into line for us to be able to do it, and they're progressing well.
Well, appreciate it. I try to get all the help out of people. I'll do my best. Any last thoughts or any final things you want to leave on here before we conclude this interview?
Yeah, cool. So what I would say is, if you are a developer, I would say come try out Somnia. What we are really interested in is kind of laying down the gauntlet for developers and asking the question, what could you build on Somnia that you couldn't build before? What kind of on-chain app did you have in your mind that like, I'd really like to build this thing, but you couldn't do it because of blockchain performance, and now potentially you can. So for developers, I'd say come try out. You'll hopefully be very impressed by the fact that you can do stuff you couldn't do before. And then on the community side, I'd say if you're interested in kind of getting involved in the quests and interested in kind of joining the Somnia community, just go to somnia.network. There you'll kind of go through all the different programs and stuff like that. We're always trying to grow the community and get more people interested in the ecosystem, because ultimately for me, the blockchain is very cool tech, but the product is only as strong as our community, and growing that is a very, very important thing to us. So yeah, if you are interested in getting involved there, go to somnia.network. You'll be able to find all the links, get involved with Discord. And what I would say is the Discord community chats we do, that's where all the alpha gets leaked a lot. So definitely go there.
So there you have it. I mean, I'll put links to everything so people don't get lost or get scammed in the description down below. But Paul, I really appreciate you taking the time to come teach my audience about Somnia and yeah, sharing all the alpha. Look forward to hopefully having you again in the future. And I wish you luck with Somnia's launch.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks a lot, man.
And that's it for today's interview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already done so, would you kindly hit that subscribe button, smash that bell notification so you never miss a video. Thank you for watching another Crypto Gorilla interview. Peace.